Hey everyone, this is Lakshmi, your host from Vancouver. The last few months have been tough for many of us, and I was no exception to that. But heartfelt thanks to all our viewers for the overwhelming messages inquiring about Pearl webinars. We're back to business with 2 webinars a month. Well, who does not have struggles in life, right? And during pandemic, no one was short of it. One of my hardest struggles for me was losing my dear ones in my family, all in a very short span of time. There were times when I felt lost and purposeless. It was not only affecting me mentally, emotionally, and spiritually sometimes, but also physically. And because of that, it had a ripple effects on my immediate family too. That's when I realized I need to make some changes. Luckily, I had the beautiful practice of heartfulness meditation and support of the family that helped me to overcome and become aware of what's happening with me and maintain balance. And that's why I love this topic, something that's very close to my heart. It's so real, I think everyone can relate to it. In the midst of a global pandemic, we face one of our greatest life challenges, striving to maintain balance and stability. But also, we use it as a great opportunity for personal and social transformation. Now, that's what we're going to find out. How do we use it as a personal and social transformation in this webinar by listening to Stephen on heartfulness, which is a little different from the heartfulness meditation I mentioned earlier on. His heartfulness is about the practice of mindfulness, compassion, and responsibility, and helping one to find this new balance or greater wholeness. Now, Dr. Stephen Murphy-Shigematsu is a clinical and cultural psychologist on the faculties of Stanford School of Humanities and Science and School of Medicine. He teaches courses in heartfulness, a way of being with mindfulness, compassion, and responsibility. He is engaged in education as a transformation for 30 years at Harvard, the University of Tokyo, and Stanford, integrating Eastern and Western ways, art and science, tradition and innovation, designing gentle, healing, inclusive learning spaces. His scholarly work has contributed to understanding in areas of mindfulness, wellness, narrative psychology, racial identity, multicultural counseling, and diversity in both Japan and the United States. He uses storytelling to enhance whole person learning, author of many books, including From Mindfulness to Heartfulness, transforming self and society with compassion. Now, if you'd like to know more about him, do visit his website, www.murphyshigematsu.com. Now, welcome, Stephen. I'm so happy to have you with us in the Pearl webinar today.
ありがとうございます。今日はお招きいただきまして、どうもありがとうございます。今日は皆さんがこの大変な状況の中でかなり苦しんでいると思いますので、できるだけちょっと心が響くように。
Hi, sorry to intrude, Stephen. I thought we were going to speak in English, and this is Pearl Webinars, the Heartfulness platform.
Oh, this isn't the Toyota Foundation, right?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, good. So this is English. Okay, got it. So I'm not just being silly, but I'm also trying to induce a certain kind of consciousness to what we're doing, and I'd like to explain that now. And
thank you.
One thing I'm hoping to bring is a sense of beginner's mind, which many of you know the meaning of, which comes from Zen Buddhism, and it's a sense that if you can see things a little bit differently, that if you can just alter your consciousness a little bit, then it has the possibilities of that you see things in a completely new way, and that gives you this sense of possibility. And I think now we need to feel the sense of possibility so much because we have a sense of loss and grief, that we have lost so many things. And so to feel a sense of a new beginning seems so important right now. And in Zen Buddhism, the beginner's mind is also said to be the mind of compassion, because if we're truly awake and we're present and we're bring our attention to this moment, then we also are not only aware of ourselves and our own feelings, but also other people. And we're aware much more of other people, and so that we can connect with that sense of compassion to others. A related concept that I wanted to bring in right away is the sense of ichigo ichie, which is the Japanese expression for literally one moment and one coming together. So it's a sense that in the tea ceremony that you're engaging in something extremely simple of preparing tea, serving tea, drinking the tea. But if you can enter into that place with a sense of this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, this is a once in a lifetime moment, it will never come again. And therefore, if I can bring myself here as completely as possible, then I will be truly alive and aware and awake, and I will really be able to take full appreciation of what life is offering me. And so even in this, rather mundane experience of having a talk online, if you can bring yourself with a sense that, oh, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, then it will bring a very different sense of appreciation to it. I also wanted to bring in a very simple way, the sense of vulnerability. So if you hear something is occurring that you didn't expect, and of course you expected this would be in English, suddenly it's in a different language that you may not understand, it gives a sense of vulnerability. And vulnerability, to me, is really the essence of human nature and of consciousness. So if we can really feel this sense of vulnerability, then we sense our own humanity. And in touching that vulnerability, I think we can really connect with this basic sense of aliveness that's beginner's mind. And I think in Buddhist thought, there's also the very clear expression that it's the seed of enlightenment, and that this is already inside of us. So if we can tap into this feeling of vulnerability, our real human nature, then we can also have this seed of enlightenment that's already in us begin to blossom. And all of us are feeling a much greater sense of vulnerability than we have in most times of our lives. And we feel the sense that we don't know what could happen, what is happening, when things will ever get better, and a feeling of a lack of control over things. And to me, this brings up the very great conflict or tension in what is between mastery and mystery. So our attempts as humans to master and control our environment, to master nature, to capture it and cut it up open and analyze it. And that's our mastery. And our sense of mastery now has really lost a lot of, we've lost a lot of confidence in that sense of mastery, our ability to control things. And we realize that so much in life is really out of our control. And we're challenged to really surrender to this sense of the mystery of life, the parts of life that we cannot know, we'll never be able to know, we'll never be able to master, and to somehow surrender to that and appreciate it and to let go of our need to control things. And to me, this brings up a very great paradox also of human nature, that when we can accept things, then somehow it gives us that things that we cannot change, it helps us to change the things that we can. And this is true also for ourselves, this paradox that you find in our human nature, that if we can really accept ourselves as we are, then it gives us the courage to change ourselves. This is true for our feelings about others as well. If we can accept them as they are, they often tell us, I feel I'm able to change. And the same for ourselves. If we can do that for ourselves, it's the source of our own personal change. But at the moment, we all feel lost in what the United States military has called the VUCA world, which is volatile. It could be changed at any moment. It could erupt, explode, not just nature could explode, but also the forces of violence that are among us. The sense of uncertainty. We don't have any sense of certainty about what will happen, what is happening, how it will end. And that complexity, that there is no simple technological answer to what we are confronting. There's no clear answer. And so it's a real complex to figure out how we're going to get through this. And it's ambiguous. It isn't really clear at all. And so the solutions don't seem at all easy to find. And we're all struck by the sense of loss. So many losses over the past year, the loss of very ordinary but essential things like our jobs, the hobbies or the familiar things in our lives that we relied on so much. Things are also our dreams of what we dreamed that we would be able to do, our hopes, the things that gave us pleasures, just the simple routines of life, the customs that we have relied on so long, cultural and social, to give our lives stability and meaning and balance. And also very major things like Olympics in Japan, and just some ceremonies, the graduation ceremonies, entrance ceremonies, so many things that have been lost and have really given us this sense of grief, that we feel all these kinds of common grief reactions of shocks, disbelief, denial, anxiety, distress, or even anger, and of course, sadness. But we have suffered these kinds of losses so deeply now in the past year. And it's something that really weighs on us very heavily at this moment. I personally have the strange experience of losing one grandmother almost 100 years ago, or more than 100 years ago now, 1918. My grandmother, Mary, who was an immigrant from Ireland to the United States, died in what they called the Spanish flu in 1918. My other grandmother, who is Japanese, just died a few years ago at the age of 111, one of the oldest known persons in the world at the time. When she died in this town in Western Japan, and when we had the funeral, there was something that I was especially struck by, because as I was with her in her last years and moments, she started to say very few words, but one that stuck was arigato, which means thank you. And it was an expression of thanks to everyone and everything that was in her life. And it was something that on the wall of the temple was this poster, and it simply says, let's begin things with thanks. But in small letters, which you can't see, it says, be grateful for all that life gives you, and be grateful for the gift of life itself. And to me, this really summarized what my grandmother was all about, and how she taught me that to forget was to lose your soul. And I said, what should I remember, Grandma? And she said, remember your ancestors. Remember that you have a precious human life. Remember that we are like the cherry blossoms, and we're all dying. The cherry blossoms are so loved in Japan because they're of not just beautiful, but they're here just for a moment. And it has that sense of ichigo ichie, or another expression in Japanese, mono no aware, that this is something beautiful, but it will only be here for a moment. And so if you can appreciate that, then that is the way to live with full, realizing the real treasures that life offers you. And this is something I try to capture every morning, with this sense of recognizing that my life is precious, and that I would want to use this human life for the benefit of all beings, and that I will really have a sense of responsibility also for myself, that I have this life, I have this gift of life, and that I have a responsibility to then extend this, the compassion that I have to other people, to make everyone's life as good as I can within the limitations of my own humanity. And so I believe in the importance of starting the day with a good ritual, which could be of many different kinds of prayers, meditations, yoga, walking, qigong, anything that really connects us with the simple fact of our life, the simple reality that we're alive. And I also tune in very strongly to this Japanese sense of ma, which is that the most beautiful sound is the sound of ma, the silence, the gap that occurs between words or between sounds, and with the belief that that is where the light enters. So if we can create spaces that light enters, and so I'm very aware that I'm talking endlessly here, and that how that is something as I age, I feel less desire to do, because I really believe that the importance of creating silence and a silent space where the sound can come in. I also know that there are times that we need to speak, and that speaking is important, and that not speaking can be a betrayal of our own feelings, our own beliefs, and that it's an act of responsibility to speak. But I speak mostly in stories, and I believe that the power of storytelling is what enables us to pass on knowledge and wisdom from person to person and generation to generation, that stories can help us to cross borders between ourselves and others. And if you look at these two characters, you see the close relationship of stories and enlightenment, that the stories simply show the word and the enlightenment shows the heart. And so to me, this conveys the sense that stories are getting us close to enlightenment. The story I will quickly tell is one that has led me through many universities that are known around the world. And going through those, I really realized that there's a great deal of knowledge there, but there's a great deal of something is really missing when we focus exclusively on our brains and our minds and are somehow separated from our hearts. And for me, one of the life-changing events was a fire that I was in, which burned down my house while I was in it, and I had to escape from the fire. But when I escaped, I was struck by this very powerful sense of that I was completely naked, in the sense I had nothing left in the world, and yet I was completely free, and that I had everything because I had my life. And this very simple prayer came to me: oh my God, you are here. Oh my God, I am here. Oh my God, we are here. And to me, this meant many things. That one was simply to connect to the mystery of life, and to not to recognize that I was not the master of my own fate, but that we were about to, or that I was about to enter into a new period in which I was able to let go of the desire to control and to see myself as the one who was able to master fate, and to really embrace the mystery of life. I sensed that it would be better if I could understand that I had a sense of purpose. And I had been raised Catholic, and the story about Jesus wandering from home as a teenager and his worried mother looking for him and saying, how can you leave your mother like this, worried? And his very cool response was, don't you know that I have to be about my Father's business? And I love that as a teenager, to think that we had a purpose in life, and that we alone could know what that purpose was, and that we were challenged to find that purpose and then to live out that purpose. I was also encouraged by scientists and philosophers like Einstein, who told us that we can sense sometimes that purpose. And if we can sense what that purpose is, then maybe we can keep on a path to realizing what that purpose is. And that exploration, though ironically, may lead us simply back to where we started. And that something is already within us that will help us to get through life. The wisdom is somehow inside already, and we need to return home to that wisdom. For me to return to that earlier message that I gave about Ichigo, Ichie, it's that sense of, for me, of returning to the place of my ancestors, and to really remembering that the sense that we are just like nature. We are part of nature and always living and always dying. And that I felt at that early age in my life that I had spent a lot of time trying to find out that there was some kind of a magical way to live that would somehow solve all the problems of human existence. But this saying came to me too from Thich Nhat Hanh. The true miracle is not walking on water or walking in air, but simply walking on this earth. And that's something that I really felt strongly was the way to live well and to be grounded and balanced in life, and but also to be challenging ourselves with this sense of not having fully realized who we are. And as I studied formally psychology, I was more and more convinced that we are only a small part of what we are created to be, that we have fulfilled so little of our real human potential. And that part of it is going outward, but a lot of it is going inward, looking inside yourself and seeing what is already there. And it's also switching from the ways of saying, why me? Why is this happening to me? Or even this very self-centered view of what do I want from life? And then asking, what is life asking of me? Why is, these things that are happening to me, what is it telling me about the challenges that I face? In a Christian sense, it could be, what is this cross that I am called to bear? Why is this, what is life asking me to do? And how can I respond to that? Another way that my grandmother taught me about what she called the samurai way of thinking was this sense that we can feel like we're living, or that we're willing to die for something, to protect our family, but that there's an even greater challenge to find out what is it that you're willing to live for. And you may find that the very thing that you were willing to die for now makes you want to live. You want to be alive for that purpose. And so discovering that before it's too late is something that's extremely important. The heartfulness that Lakshmi mentioned, that I feel is not just based in what we have come to know in the West here as mindfulness, but that because the mindfulness in the Western world has become so narrowly defined and practiced, I feel the need to really emphasize the sense of compassion and the awareness that our lives are so completely dependent on the lives of others, and that we are here only through the grace of others and the contributions of others and the love of others, which we've depended on from the very beginning of our lives. And so that we need to continually expand ourselves out, our circles of compassion, and to realize that we are not really separate. And this is something, of course, taught in all spiritual traditions, that this sense of separateness is an illusion. And that's something that if we can get beyond that, then we can come together. Compassion, of course, in its Latin origin, simply meaning to feel with or to suffer with. If you look at the Chinese characters, it means something very similar. To be a human is to be with others, to suffer with others, to be with others in this real sense of connectedness that carries us beyond our own individual separateness that we so often feel captured in our minds. And that this separateness is overcome also by feeling that vulnerability that I mentioned at the beginning, what Japanese call wabi-sabi or mono no aware, which also emphasize imperfection, impermanence, incompleteness, that we don't have to strive to be perfect, but being human is to be imperfect. And that's part of what we need to accept. And there's a lot of that message in the story of Kintsugi, which is of a valued pot that was broken returned to the owner and expected that it would be returned as if it had never been broken. And all the brokenness was hidden. Instead, it was highlighted with gold lacquer, which to me is a beautiful way of showing how the parts in which we are broken can also be the places in which we are strongest. The places in which life has fractured us, has wounded us, can be the places that we know the most, that we learn the most about living, and can become our most beautiful and strongest parts. And so my own journey as going from a confused youth to somebody who was audacious enough to believe I could be work with other people to help other people along the path was also I received a sense of encouragement from the idea that you could be a wounded healer, that you didn't need to be perfect, you didn't need to you just needed to have survived and learned from your experiences, and to feel that those were experiences that you wanted to somehow use and share with others, and just offer yourself in service to others. And so I mentioned that I'd been through many different universities where I felt that there was a lack of the heart, and that what came to me was that in my own work that I could do, which was often centered in the university, was that if I could simply bring the heart more into that work through what I called Heartfulness courses, where we simply met in a way that we related to each other with vulnerability and humility in a way that we felt more human. And that these were kinds of courses that I started to think of as a storytelling tea house. The tea house having the very basic virtues of peace, respect, purity, and tranquility. But also, if you look at the door to the tea house, you see that the door is very small, narrow, and short. And so the samurai, when they entered the tea house, had to remove all armor, all swords, and they had to lower their head and bow and to enter that tea house. And so the tea house was also a place of vulnerability and humility. And so I designed my teaching spaces in that way. And I've gone from using the word mindfulness to heartfulness simply because of the way that I feel it's been really distorted in the Western world. So to emphasize these kinds of values of mindfulness, and not just mindfulness as beginner's mind, but vulnerability, authenticity, connectedness, acceptance, listening, gratitude, and responsibility. And if you look at the Chinese characters, you get a sense that it simply means to bring yourself as completely as possible with your presence into this moment. And so, of course, this involves meditation, which is enhanced by places where I teach. There's a meditation center where I can bring my students to begin classes. And I also bring people who have learned so much about their lives from confronting illness and death, and to feel this, have been able to understand how life, we're all filled with fear, but it can really be something that Buddhism talks about the fearless heart. I don't know how many people can ever become completely fearless, but we can certainly overcome our fear to the point of acting and feeling like every day is a day we need to act. And those like my friend Barnett, who confronted a life-ending cancer towards the end of his life, saying that I'm learning so much about life when I have so little time left, because I'm so aware of the time that I have left. And this makes me grateful for this simply being alive and being committed to appreciating every moment I have for myself and also for others. And this is the kind of wake-up call I hope to bring to all of us, that we can, that we don't have to confront a life-ending illness or an accident. We don't need to make the universe yell so loud to us to get our attention, that if we can simply awaken by our knowledge, say yes to life, in spite of all that's happening to us, to say, I will engage with life to the best of my ability, to using all the resources that I'm given, And knowing that so much is already there in my hands, that this expression in Japanese, often used in the tea rooms too, is that the treasure is already there in the palm of your hands. And partly what we need to do is simply to wake up. So I'd like to end my presentation by just bringing the voices of three people in my ancestors. This is my mother who is still with us. She's 97 years old, but she has osteoporosis. She falls, she breaks bones, she rehabilitates, they come together again. But she personifies this expression in Japanese, nana korobi yaoki, which means you fall 7 times, but you get up 8 times. She falls, she gets up with a smile every time. And we often ask her, how can you be smiling so much? And she says, Steve, this is just life. It's all part of life. And I'm always just asking, what does life want from me? And how can I best respond to that? And the best way is both with this sense of living fiercely, but also gently, accepting the things that you can't change, but with the things you can change, to really tackling them with a fierceness and with to the fullness of your ability. My father, who did die young, the last words he said to me was, everything's going to be all right. And that's something I use as a mantra now to comfort myself and to know that he meant that he was all right as he could see himself coming closer to death, and that I would be all right too, that he had faith in me. He trusted that I would be all right no matter whatever happened to me. And that's something that I rely on now in darkest times, the sense of that somebody had faith in me and trusted in me, and that I can also trust in life itself, that it will be all right. And my grandmother, who I started with, I'd like to also end with her words, which was, she also said to me something very similar, "Masubete wa daijoubu desu," which means in Japanese the same thing, everything will be all right. And I sensed that as she was very close to death, she was also telling me, calming my fears and saying, I'm all right, and you will also be all right. And if you can live with this sense of gratitude, as we started, grateful for all that life brings you and grateful for life itself, then I believe we will have lived a very good life. So this is the end of my presentation part. And we have time that Lakshmi and I will engage in some discussion.
Thank you, Stephen. I mean, it was a beautiful presentation. For sure, you have a beautiful family. And I like the way you expand on this notion of, ethnic diversity, you being half and half, and your way of storytelling, to help us understand the complexity of this journey and exploring and, becoming whole. And also the other thing that I was very touched by this is this kintsugi project, the broken pieces which are filled by the liquid gold and makes it all the more beautiful. It just reminds me that, we're not perfect, but yet, it's perhaps the struggles are our beauties, and they add character to our life. And we just have to be grateful for all that's happening and really carry on. So thank you, Stephen. That was really wonderful. And I think it's coming at the right time as well. We all need to hear it. And, that no matter what happens, we can, use these tools of heartfulness, the practice that you're talking, or the meditation, yoga, and all those things that you had listed out, use them in a way that they can support us to lead a positive, productive, and an empowered life. So like you said, I do have some questions for you.
Okay.
Now, why do you believe that embracing vulnerability is part of this journey of heartfulness?
I think it's it's comes a lot from I was very excited when I was young about the possibility of education. And so I pursued formal education at what are some of the most famous universities in the world. And then I taught students at those universities. And I developed a very strong sense of disillusionment that what we think of in our mainstream society as education was very lacking in certain ways, that was did not enable us to reach our full capacity, and the full knowledge that we had as human beings was not being brought in. And so when I started to feel vulnerability was the key to that, and I demonstrated that for some of my colleagues, and I was told, oh, we don't do that at the university. We leave ourselves at the door. And what the person meant was that we are here only to give knowledge, skills, information, and not here to be human beings. And I said, but that's how humans learn the most. We learn from other humans, and what we need to learn is how to be human. And I sensed that the way to do that was through vulnerability, in the sense that vulnerability meaning, not just the sense of what are my weaknesses or where have I made mistakes or where do I have shortcomings. Vulnerability simply in the sense of how do I connect, how can I be most human? And to bring that into the educational space, I just found repeatedly that students said to me, this is reaching something inside of me that has never been reached before by education. And that I sensed that as the teacher, I could model that, and that you can't exactly teach it directly, but you can just embody it and say, I'm here as a human being. I do have a role as a teacher, and I'm in a system, so I have to be responsible for your grades and things like that. But I'm here also simply as another human being. I asked them to call me sensei, which in Japanese is the word that you commonly address a teacher or a doctor or somebody who is normally considered to be above you. But the Chinese characters don't actually have any sense of hierarchy. And they simply say that someone who lives before you. And so I tell them, I'm here as your elder. I've lived before you. And I have things that I'm learning along this, by going along this path of life, as awake and aware as I can be. And I'm here to offer you a relationship like that in which we could share those things. But I also want to recognize that no matter how young you are also a sensei in your own way. Because it isn't, living before isn't just living in age and having a lot of years, but younger people can be very wise too, simply because they've had certain experiences no one else has had. And if they've been open to really reflecting on what those experiences are teaching them, then everyone is a sensei.
That's right. Well said, actually. I like that part where you incorporate vulnerability in your teachings, and you model that to your students. That is beautiful. Now, here I have your book. I want to share it to our audience. And I have read this book, From Mindfulness to Heartfulness. Really, I think Stephen shows us the ways we can weave together mindfulness and compassion into what he terms as heartfulness. And he leads us through the stages of heartfulness, like he said, from vulnerability and connectedness to acceptance and gratitude. So it's a wonderful book. Please buy and read. It's available in Amazon. And in this book, in your writing, you often mention creativity. How does creativity enhances one's life journeys?
One of my students surprised me recently. He said, everyone who takes Sensei's courses wants to be an artist. And I remember growing up, the last thing that my parents wanted me to be was an artist, because they said, this is totally impractical, and we were a working class family, and you've simply got to get a job. And
Right.
so I was a little bit, shocked to say, oh no, I don't want to, encourage all my students to think they can be artists. But I think what the student meant was simply that I ask each person to be open to the creative unfolding of their life, or the creative design of their life, or to not just accepting what other people tell you that this is what you should do, or this is what you should believe, or this is what you're supposed to do. And then within the limitations of your own financial, economic, social, economic circumstances, to feel whatever freedom you can have to discover who you truly are, and then to live in a creative way within the boundaries of what you're able to do. And I recognize that the world that I live in, when it's a place like a Stanford University, where the people are very entitled and privileged and have all kinds of possibilities, that doesn't exist for everyone. But I want to believe that everyone has some capacity, to creatively design their life, and to think of their life outside of the rigid boundaries that other people have imposed on them, and to feel that even if the physical circumstances can't be changed too much, that there is still the possibility of feeling going beyond the boundaries or the borders of what you have been told about who you are and what you can do in life. And so that's the way I think of creativity, and how it can be part of, I think it can come from really being mindful and being heartful, because you can really tune in better to who am I, the sense of who am I, what am I created to do, what can I do within the limitations of all the responsibilities I may have to myself and to my family and to my community. And but I believe that that's what keeps us alive too, is just some hope that there is at least some room for creativity in our lives.
That's right. It answers, in some ways, my next question as well, which I have, which is like, when, during this pandemic, people have suffered loss of life. And, is there anything that a person who has suffered such a loss of a loved one, when they go through your teachings, what can you offer them as to help their grief?
I think people who are at this moment have had it's one of the most difficult moments in many people's lives, and most people's lives, maybe in some parts of the world, because we've lost our rituals of grief. And that so many things, the kinds of normal processes that we've relied on in different religions to help us to mourn the loss of loved ones, have been taken from us. Many loved ones have died alone, and yet
Right.
we know that so many people say, all I really want is to be surrounded by my loved ones when I die, and that hasn't happened, and that all that most of us want to do for others is to be there for them at that moment. And so that's the great difficulty of what we are confronting now, and it makes us really struggle to find our alternate ways of grief, and sometimes those are just not possible. And so what I've started to do is to offer more simple places where people can come together to grieve, and that is something that because it's been lost, it has to be created somewhat artificially now. But simply places that people come together, and could be about the loss of somebody through death, but it could also be in recent days, I've been offering places for people to come together because they're of the anti-Asian violence that we're seeing in the United States. and that people feel the need to come together and to share this moment, share those feelings of fear and anger and anxiety. And I think that's what we can offer. And I feel like what nobody needs is a place where they hear somebody claim that to simply get over this and to get over your feelings. And that we know that grief is a long process and it's different for each person. And there are sometimes predictable stages of moving through the grief, but sometimes it doesn't happen in that way. And so we also need to not rush in with solutions and not rush in with there's also psychiatric diagnosis for what is grief and how long it should last. And if it lasts beyond that, then there's a problem. And I think that's also something we need to be very careful about, is, really not stigmatizing the grief process and allowing people to move through it at their own pace, but also offer support that is can be simply that you offer a place where you can find something that takes the place of the rituals that we've lost. And so creating grief circles, and I think is something that's really important. And in my courses that I've always offered, there are places simply where I call it I try to be the refuge rather than just simply a safe place where people can come and be themselves with whatever they're going through at that moment. And so I think we all need more of those kinds of spaces.
Thank you, Stephen. Now, how do you get to the heart via the mind? Now, in other words, how does mindfulness become heartfulness?
That's the big question that is seems to be elusive.
It's all about what you had shared earlier, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's so there's many kinds of mindfulness that are being offered as well, and that many of the people, the students that come to me, they say I've seen other mindfulness and I felt that it wasn't enough for me, that it was too focused on the self, and it was all about here where I am in Stanford in Silicon Valley, it was about how do you be more successful? Here's another tool to help you to be more successful.
Okay.
And have more, more achievement, and that's not what they were looking for. And to me, that's also there's an emptiness to that, focusing simply on, can I use meditation? Can I use mindfulness? Can I use heartfulness for my own benefit to be even greater? And there's, of course, great virtue in that. But if it stops there, then I think that we're really losing all the possibility of mindfulness and heartfulness. And so I feel the need to consciously bring in the other aspects of compassion, and to emphasize that if we can be open to what we're doing as beyond having meaning beyond just for our own sakes, our own individual well-being even, then it can have great meaning for society, and that it can transform, if we can transform ourselves, as many spiritual teachers have said, that's the seed for transforming society. But if we don't have that consciousness, then it's not going to happen. That if we think that this is just for ourselves, and if we're locked into that very individualistic way of seeing things, then I think that's where it will stop. And so that's where I feel the need to really bring in very quickly and carefully that this is not just about the self, but it's about a bigger sense of self that is what connects us with others, and that therefore that's the possibility, the true possibility of mindfulness. And but how do you do it? I think it really does mean that healing communities are really important, and that we need to be with others who have that same sense that mindfulness and heartfulness are not should not just be about ourselves and our own individual advancement, but to be with others who also have that same sense that we want our own mindfulness and heartfulness to be what connects us with others, what gives us more compassion, which moves us to a feeling that I feel responsible, not just for my own life, to living it the best I can, but responsible to contribute to the lives of others, to be in service to others, and that's how I'll find the meaning. And it's really hard to do that by ourselves. And that's why I think the importance of community comes in. Can we find others with whom we can share that journey
together? No, beautifully said, actually. It's always not about the self. The beauty lies in bringing everybody in that circle, right? And it's a beautiful answer. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for your wonderful presentation and answering these questions for us as well. We welcome all our audience to participate in a little meditation session with us. As you know, this webinar is offered by Heartfulness Institute, and we always have a few minutes of meditation towards the end of each webinar. So this will be a guided session, and I will talk you through it. So let's sit comfortable and close our eyes and follow these simple instructions. It'll last for about 5 minutes to 7 minutes. Okay? Sit comfortably and close your eyes. Wiggle your toes. Now feel them relax. Relax your ankles and feet. Feel the energy from the Mother Earth moving upwards, relaxing the calf muscles, the knees, thighs, and hips. Now feel how both your legs are completely relaxed. Take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Relax. Relax your seating area, stomach, and waist. Breathe in. Breathe out. And relax. Now feel the energy in your back. From the top to the bottom, your entire back is relaxed. Breathe in. Breathe out. And relax. Now relax your chest and shoulders. And feel your shoulders simply melting away. Now let the energy flow into your arms, relaxing the upper arms, lower arms, hands, all the way to the tip of the fingers. And feel how both your arms are completely relaxed. Now relax your neck muscles and let go of any tension you may be holding there. Now let the energy flow into your face, relaxing the jaw, mouth, nose, cheeks, earlobes, eyes, forehead, all the way to the top of the head. Now feel how your whole body is completely relaxed. Now gently draw your attention to the heart. Imagine the source of light that's already in your heart is illuminating and pulling your attention inwards. If you have distracting thoughts, gently brush them aside and treat them as passing clouds. Remain still and quiet and absorbed in this light until you hear me say, "That's all." That's all. You may gently open your eyes when you feel ready to do so. So thank you all for joining us for this beautiful session with Stephen. And again, heartfulness meditation is a practice where we move from a world of thinking to a world of feeling, learning to live life from the heart, just like how Stephen was saying earlier on in his presentation. So they've got very similar philosophies, although the heartfulness that Stephen had mentioned was completely, I don't think he was aware of the heartfulness meditation at that point when he had even written that book. But anyway, they're just beautiful philosophies. And it's just great to inculcate into one's daily routine. So thank you again, Stephen, for your wonderful presentation.
Oh, thank you.
If there's one takeaway. Yes, please.
The meditation was very beautiful.
Thank you. Sorry, we had to keep it short in our sessions because that's all the time we have during the webinar. But of course, one is welcome to try it. Please visit our website, heartfulness.org, or if you want to get in touch with a trainer, you can write to me at pearl@heartfulness.org, and we will put you in touch with a trainer. As you know, that these practices are completely free of charge. So I just wanted to mention that to our audience. But thank you again, Stephen, for this wonderful, wonderful webinar. The takeaway for me, and there were many, and the one thing that really stuck out was the fact that, we're not expected to be perfect. Our struggles really build our character, and each of us, our experiences are unique. We are intricate, we're complicated, we're seasoned, and we're beautiful. And we just don't have to be ashamed of our past. We just have to remember that the decision to start the healing process is entirely up to us. So whenever you are ready, get out there, use these practices to know yourself better. And I think that's a start to really becoming the best version of yourself. So thank you all, audience, for joining us today. And I hope you had enjoyed this session. I look forward to seeing you all in our next session next month. Until then, take care. Bye for now.